So I've just finished riding around for the last 3 hours on my YT Izzo demo bike that I borrowed for the day. I thought I'd give you a bit of an update on some of the things I liked, some of the things I didn't like, and my general thoughts. So a little bit about the bike. This is the large frame, it's the Pro Race version, so it's got a decent component spec. And I've got it in the low setting. I've been riding around Surrey Hills, so doing some cross country, doing some nice climbs, also smashing some of the trails coming downhill, of course, and a little bit on the road just to see how it rolls and jump about on its side and just see how kind of flexy the frame is. Just giving it a good all-round test. So I'm not going to go through all the geometry. If this is a bike that you're interested in, you've probably already seen that and looked it up. So thoughts on the bike. It climbs as well as everybody says it does. I was very surprised. I'm coming from, my last bike was a Yeti SB100, and I also ride a very lightweight carbon cross-country hardtail with 100mm travel. So I really didn't expect it to climb up the hills quite as efficiently. It's a light bike as well. I haven't weighed it, but I'm going to say it's around about 12.5 kilograms, maybe 13, in that kind of ballpark. Of course, some great components on the bike help keep that weight down. The lockout does work quite well. You sit down in the shock, roughly about 15 millimeters roughly, but then from there it's nice and stable, so there is a small amount of movement. It's not completely rigid like a hardtail, like some people have claimed it to be. However, in that position, locked out, it climbs well. Traction is good. The seating position is nice as well. The long reach is really good. One thing I found, which I really did not like, is the lockout for the rear shock, that RockShox grip shift that they're using. When you're going up a very steep hill and you're locked out, you're pulling on those handlebars, that grip shift that we've got that unlocks the rear suspension, I keep opening that suspension up when I'm locked, and obviously when you're climbing up, that feeling of it, the rear suspension opening, it just drops you down into the bike. And very similar, it feels like when you're bonking, that kind of sinking down into the bike, and it's not what you want when your heart rate's up at 180, 185 BPM and you're burning through your lungs trying to get up this hill. That's the last kind of feeling you want. I would say that the rear end is a little bit flexible. There is certainly a little bit of play. Now, I'm not going to say that's unpleasant. I've been hitting some of these berms as hard as I can in the mud, and this idea that there's some kind of rear wheel buzz, I've not experienced that myself. So I'm going to say it's absolutely fine. And actually, when you're climbing, you can feel it a little bit, and I'd actually say that's quite pleasant. It allows you to lock it out on a bumpy climb, even going over some roots, and you've still got a good amount of traction in there. When you're really digging deep on a steep climb and you're locked out, you're slightly just twisting that on the handlebars just to engage the body and pull everything into the center. What that does is, just by pulling it just 2-3 millimeters, that pulls the cable and opens the shock, and you feel it just open and then lock again, and then open and lock again as your hand is moving around those handlebars. Because another thing, those RockShox grips, they're really horrible. They're very hard, they're very thin, not to my liking. I didn't feel like they gave me a good connection to the handlebars. I definitely want something a little bit thicker and a bit tackier, and that's riding with gloves as well, in the dry. So just a few tweaks on the cockpit actually. When steering, there's some strange noises which, from looking at it, it looks like the cables going into the frame just make some creaking, but it sounds like the headset. I've checked the headset and that's absolutely fine, so feeling nice and solid actually. So it seems like it is those cables. Let's see. Not sure if you can hear that. but it's quite concerning actually. We don't like those kind of noises on a bike, do we? And then finally, as other people have mentioned, I wanted to play about with the shocks. Couldn't get my shock pump onto the rear shock, which yeah, so I had read about that. Didn't expect it to be an issue. It was an issue, so have to buy a new shock pump. Although I'm sure I read in a forum somewhere that the shock pump that comes with the bike fits, so as long as it's a good quality one, then it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So when you're descending, you need to ride it like it's a cross-country race bike. That's what I'm feeling from this. If you're used to a trail bike and sitting very square and centered in the bike, you might feel that the front end hasn't got so much grip, and that those forks, which are fantastic forks I must add, aren't really working for you. The more you lean and get that chest over the handlebars and dig that front wheel in and really ride it like that, and let the slight bit flex that's in the rear wheel help you keep that traction using your hips to steer, actually it becomes a very, very, very capable descender. Surprisingly good. The first couple of rides I did, I was kind of expecting it to feel like a trail bike, but the more I've got my weight forwards and pushed that front end in and tried to trust those front tyres, the Forecaster, which from all the reviews that you probably read, everyone's saying change that out for something a bit beefier. Hey, how are you doing? Now that I'm kind of a bit more on the bike, used to it, and getting my weight onto that front wheel to really improve that traction, not seeing the need for it so much. Maybe a little bit, but we'll see. So a few things that surprised me on the bike. With such a long reach, it's got a 50mm stem on there. I was kind of thinking, you know what, I'm probably going to want to drop that down to 35mm. I quite like the 50mm once I got used to it. One thing I will say, because I've come from a cross-country background mainly, you don't ride this bike like a trail bike, you ride it like a cross-country bike. And what I mean by that is you have to be quite aggressive with the front end, get your weight and your chest right over those handlebars when you're descending. So you're in that kind of rocket ship position. And from that position, you've got way more traction on that front tyre. Some people have been saying they don't like that front tyre. I've not had a problem with it. We had quite a bit of rain last night. There's a bit of mud. The routes are extremely slippy, but the rest of the trail is okay. So the front tyre was absolutely fine, but you need to get into that front position, that forward position on the bike, really be aggressive on the bike. That worked a treat, and it took me a couple of trails just to kind of get that set up. Anyway, right on. It's a very good bike going uphill, and it's a very good bike going downhill. All round, it's a very good bike. I was surprised. I was very impressed at its ability to get up hills really fast. It just makes you want to push really hard. I think the descending is really good. You just have to be comfortable getting into a very forward position, getting over the handlebars. Would I buy the bike? If I was somebody who was coming from a cross-country background but also liked trail and wanted a single bike that was a jack of all trades, then yeah, I think it would be a very good choice. The idea of doing marathons on the bike, yeah, I think so. It's certainly light enough, certainly capable of keeping your speed while you're descending, but also sticking with the pack going up some of those hills. What could you change on the bike? So for me, I was thinking, certainly wanted to get a volume spacer in that shock. It would be good to be able to utilize that shock while climbing, instead of having to rely on the lockout. Certainly when it was unlocked, the climbing capabilities weren't nearly as good as they were when the bike is locked out. And yeah, changing the cockpit. So I think it's a cracking bike. It's certainly great value, and certainly one that would probably look to get added into my arsenal of bikes. there'll be more content coming soon. Cheers, bye bye.